Hi there, my name is Bud, and I'm an implementation manager in customer experience here at FuseBill, voted best person at the office to steal lunch from 3 years running. Today, my colleague Christine and I are going to get into the topic of dunning management, or the process of ensuring your business collects on the invoices it sends out to customers. You probably already know that our platform offers features to streamline and optimize this process. We love helping our customers automate their entire recurring billing process, but we're also aware that at the end of the day, if you can't collect on your invoices, your cash flow and even your business can be at risk. So I'm excited to get into this webinar and help you guys collect more of your hard-earned revenue without having to kick in any doors. During this webinar, we're going to get into some juicy topics like what happens in the platform when you choose to automate different dunning management features, or what dunning feature setup is going to yield the best results for your business in terms of collections, reduced revenue leakage, and even churn mitigation, and what additional things can your team be doing to achieve the best collections results. Our clients are constantly processing recurring billing in our platform. You're issuing invoices, processing payments, and often having to deal with failed payments. Dunning is one of the areas where we can really help optimize your business. All right, Christine, should we get started?
Yep, let's do it. So, like Bud was just saying, when you're performing your recurring billing with FuseBill, many of you on a daily basis, there's an imperative to maximize your collection assurance. That entails reducing your amount of aging receivables, money that has less and less liquidity, and less chance of being converted into cash. The dunning tools offered in FuseBill support this process. These tools or features include automated collection retries on a scheduled basis, as well as various automated customer communication options focused on that collection assurance. So let's start by having a look at what happens in the platform when you put these features into action. When a customer's payment to your company fails, by default, FuseBill automatically begins retrying collection attempts on a scheduled basis. You have the flexibility to control this reattempt behavior by adjusting the dunning management settings inside the collection module. When an account is first created, the collection schedule is set to day 1, day 3, and day 5. This means collection will be attempted that first day, then again on the third day for a failed payment, and then a third time on day 5 for payment that's still outstanding. But of course, this is just our default setting. If your business is running monthly subscriptions and it's in a position where it can offer to extend a grace period to its customers, it can be really beneficial to think about introducing a more advanced collection schedule, perhaps spacing out retries across a 2-month period. The reason for this is many credit card collection failures are actually caused by insufficient funds, or something like that. So when you extend those dunning cycles, you give the opportunity for your customers to pay off their credit cards, creating a good chance of getting successful payments processed later on. This is how you're able to experience situations where you'll get a failed payment a couple of times in a row and then suddenly a successful payment. When this happens, you haven't just collected a payment. You've also eliminated the chance of churning out that customer. And this is very important. Failure to process customer payments and then closing a customer's account for non-payment as a result is so expensive for your business. As you know, the cost of acquiring new customers is about 5 times more than retaining your current customers. So, as much as possible, you need to maximize your collection assurance and minimize churning out your customer. And by doing this, you're ultimately going to see continual MRR growth.
With the FuseBill platform, it's easy to see the benefits of FuseBill's dunning features. And one of the areas you can see this benefit immediately is via one of the special reports in our cash reporting pillar called the Cash by Gateway report. Christine, can you show us an example of this?
Of course. So if we navigate to reports, under the cash pillar, you'll see the Cash by Gateway option. From here, you can run reports on your data to see how things have been going from a collection reattempt perspective at a high level. So if we look at this particular sample account, we see that every month we're collecting around $300,000 of payments. Most of the payment collections were successful on the first attempt. But here you can see the payments we're successfully capturing via our reattempts, or dunning payments, and this amount really starts to add up over time. As you can see, every single month we're recollecting payments, and after a period of 1 year, we've already recovered an additional $20,000 on our retry attempts alone. This is not an inconsequential amount. In fact, it probably covers a majority of the cost of the FuseBill service.
Great point, Christine, and we see this all the time with our customers. The other thing to keep in mind that isn't even reflected here financially is the number of customers that are successfully retained and will continue to generate future revenue for your business. As Christine talked about before, it's not just about revenue recovery, which is obviously great. It's about how you're able to manage your recurring billing relationships month over month and year over year, and your ability to retain your customers. When you start to reduce the amount of churn you're experiencing, you'll start to see an upward trajectory of your MRR. Preventing churn is as important as providing new signups in order to assure you get constant, healthy MRR growth. Back to you, Christine.
Thanks, Bud. So, another critical element of the dunning process is continual communications with your customers. People are always thinking about welcome emails and invoice-posted emails to bigger clients on longer-term payment schedules, like net 30 terms. But other types of emails, like letting customers know when a payment has failed, are absolutely key to dealing with this dunning situation automatically. To be most effective, this type of email needs to be informative, and it needs to link your customer back to their self-service portal so they update their payment method information. Including this call to take immediate action is what really eliminates the friction that prevents you from getting paid. So, make it easy for your customers, and you'll make it easier for your company. And, of course, instead of waiting for failed payments to occur because of a credit card expiry, you be proactive. You send out communications to customers letting them know when their credit cards are going to expire, starting 2 and 1 month prior to expiry. And again, you drive them back to the self-service portal, this time to fix a collection issue before it ever even occurs. So, these dunning-focused customer communications options we just looked at were all email-based, but we also offer the same types of communication through text messaging. I just want to note that this isn't currently a tool that's enabled by default on the platform. But if you decide this is a dunning feature you'd like to start taking advantage of, you can always contact our customer support team, and they can get you set up with that. The stats show that 90% of text messages are read within 3 minutes, and nearly 100% of text messages get opened. If we combine that with the fact that people are becoming increasingly comfortable with performing finance-related tasks on their smartphone, it's easy to see how this can really benefit your business from a dunning management perspective.
Awesome. Thank you, Christine. So can you expand a bit on how automating all of these dunning processes is beneficial, and which type of companies are going to benefit the most?
Absolutely. So, each day, you're processing a whole bunch of invoices. Envision a situation where you're having to perform all the collections on those invoices manually, keeping track of the historical failed payments that you're attempting to retry on some sort of cycle. You can easily see the massive amount of overhead that trying to do something like that at scale would begin to represent. Manual dunning is very time-consuming, and it's error-prone. Automation puts all this on autopilot, and that does 2 things. It makes it feasible to do it at scale, and it also makes it much more accurate. In terms of which types of companies are going to benefit most from automated dunning management, it's more often those in the business-to-consumer space. This is especially true when we're talking about retrying failed payments. Why is this the case? First off, automated collections are less common in B2B situations. Second, the types of payment failures you most often see in this space aren't normally what are known as soft failures. In these cases, what's more likely is that the credit card is just not good anymore, and that's not something you can bounce back from.
So the effectiveness of dunning management automation has a lot to do with the nature of the businesses you're invoicing and collecting from. This leads us to our next topic, Christine. What Dunning feature setup yields the best results for businesses in terms of collections, reduced revenue leakage, and churn reduction?
As I mentioned earlier, if you're in a position where you're able to maintain an extended grace period for your customer, then I'd really recommend doing so. Just for clarification, a grace period in the FuseBill system is a period of time between having an invoice that's due and having a collection process to pay off that due invoice. It's how many days you allow your invoices to age before you suspend service. So, if you're able to accept something like a 60-day grace period, then I would recommend adding at least day 14 and day 28 to your automated Dunning schedule. So, again, after the initial failed payment, the system would retry collection on day 14 and then again on day 28. Especially if you're dealing with a business-to-consumer situation, adding collection reattempts on this type of schedule gives your customer the opportunity to get paid and make payments on their credit cards. This then gives you a higher probability of successfully recovering payment. Now, it becomes more advanced when you start moving forward into the next month, because if you're running monthly subscriptions, the system will start to issue more invoices. I understand not everyone wants to be in a position where they're reattempting failed payments beyond the 30-day point, but FuseBill can certainly support that. For example, you might want to go up to a 40, 45, and a 60-day reattempt schedule. Now, it's very possible, after running this way for several months, to see that you've had very little successful recoveries that far out. Then you might decide to come back in and remove the additional calls against your gateway. But as I said, I would strongly recommend starting with bumping things up to a 14 and a 28 schedule in order to give an opportunity for any soft failures to be remedied with the credit card and have a higher probability of success. So, in terms of the best Dunning feature set up to reduce revenue leakage and churn, I'd also again stress the importance of leveraging those credit card expiry and failed payment communication automation options. You also definitely want to give your customers the option to access their self-service portal from those emails or text messages via links. That way, they can update their payment methods and even make overdue payments at their convenience. It's very important that the full cycle be thought about. What do you want it to look and feel like for your customers?
Okay, so that brings us to our final topic, Christine. What additional things can be done to achieve the best collections results?
You should take advantage of the reports available. Look at the Cash by Gateway report at least every couple of months, just to see how it's going. You can also use Gateway reports to see what percentage of payments are processing successfully on the first attempt, and how many are successful on retry attempts over time. What's working and what isn't about your Dunning process, and how can you improve it? You should also always keep an eye on your churn. I always encourage customers, as part of their monthly closing process, to run the MRR Momentum Report for the previous month. You find this by navigating to Reports, going to the MRR Summary, and selecting the appropriate month. This will keep you fully aware of your new signups and new money coming in, but also your customers that are churning. Who are they? How long were they customers for? Did you realize you lost those specific customers? Sometimes you get surprised by what you see, and you can actually reach out and save customers. Minimizing churn is often the least expensive way of growing your recurring billing business.
So I have one final question to put out there for you, Christine. Let's say you put all of these great Dunning features into place. You went through the process and you still have customers owing. What are your next steps?
Sure thing. So my first recommendation is to leverage the Aging Receivables report. This can be found under Invoices, Invoice Aging, and then by generating the report for the appropriate time frame. This is where billing clerks can really go in and identify everyone within the platform that owes them money, and they can sort for the oldest aged invoices. From there, they can actually go down into these customers and try to figure out why they weren't able to collect. With this information, billing clerks can take manual action, which likely involves reaching out to the customers to determine what's going on. We often talk about how the FuseBill platform is designed to get everything on autopilot as much as possible, so that your billing clerks can focus on these types of exceptions. Now, if everything goes very poorly and you get a sense that the client is not going to pay you, there are a couple of actions you need to be able to take quickly and easily as a billing clerk. One of these actions is to flag the account as being in collections. This means that, as a company, you may wish to sell this aged receivable to a collections firm. Usually, you're only going to get pennies on the dollar, but at least you get some of the money that's owed back to. And in exchange, you give another company the right to go after this missing money. Another course of action is to simply write off the unpaid invoices. So, as billing clerks, you can go into these old overdue invoices, and instead of reversing all of the charges, you can fully write off the invoice. What you're doing is expensing the full invoice amount to your bad debts expense in your accounting system. You're basically going to apply a debit to the bad debts expense and a corresponding credit to the accounts receivable balance of this customer. They will no longer owe you anything, and the status of this invoice will get flagged as written off. Again, these functions are normally done at the end of the collection cycle, when you've abandoned or given up on your ability to collect.
Great. Thank you so much, Christine, and thank you to everyone who tuned in. I just want to note that all of the Dunning features and functionalities we discussed today come out of the box with the FuseBill platform, so every one of you has access to everything we've covered here. If you have any questions about optimizing your own Dunning management process within FuseBill, our customer success team is always available to help.